Nothing mystical or spooky had ever happened in my life before. I didn't encounter ghosts, maniacs, or unexplained phenomena, and I treated all such things with a healthy dose of skepticism and humor. But now I live in constant fear. My nerves are on edge. I cannot sleep at night. I lie in bed, pouring cold sweat, and listen to every rustle in the apartment. On sleepless nights, I lie awake and think about how my life has been drastically changed by one careless decision. Fear is part of the instinct for self-preservation. If you react to danger in time, you have a better chance of survival. I can't escape the thought that if I had listened to my fear, if I had turned around in time and just walked away, I would be living my quiet, boring life right now. A happy life. A little backstory. I'm studying to be a chemical engineer. I rent a modest apartment with a friend and we split the rent. My parents live in another city. They, of course, help me with finances. I get a scholarship at the institute, but it is enough only for basic expenses and a very modest life. For a while I worked part-time as a waiter, but this work exhausted me a lot. About a month ago, an event happened that changed my life a bit. The father of a friend updated his car and gave his old Lada to his son. True, he did not give it to his son right away, but some time ago he used it for trips to kebabs, fishing. Actually, he was not going to give it away, but, according to the acquaintance, for some reason the mother began to actively push and pressure the man to give the car to his son, because he needs it more. It should be said that the father of the friend is a driver. Not a single year did not pass without an accident. In general, the miracle car was delivered in a shabby condition. We wondered together, why the hell did he need this holy trough? The institute was a 20-minute walk from us. It was hardly possible to flaunt this bucket in front of the girls. I thought about it and decided to get out of it. My friend knew about my plight and did not object to my proposal, so I started working part-time as a career. At first everything went well. The work was a pleasure. No one cared whether the car was dirty or beat up. I didn't earn as much as in a restaurant, but I was less tired, both physically and mentally. And one evening, I received an order for delivery from the restaurant. An order as an order. I didn't pay attention to the details. It was already paid for with a card. I picked it up and drove off. As I pulled up to the house, for some reason, I decided to look at the driveway windows where the delivery was waiting. To be honest, I had never done this before, but this time for some reason, I wanted to look. There were no lights on in the windows on the entire floor, even though it was getting dark outside. It wasn't that late. That's fine, I thought. The lights might be on in other rooms that I couldn't see. What do I care about that? When I was almost to the floor I wanted to go to, there was a slight excitement. There was no light either on the floor I wanted, or the floor below. Maybe they were having wiring problems. It wasn't that I was afraid of the dark. The wandering around in the dark in an unfamiliar place was uncomfortable. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and walked to the client's door. I pressed the bell button. No one was in a hurry to open the door for me. I pressed it again. Silence again. Maybe the bell doesn't work since there's a problem with the electricity, I thought, and knocked, but nothing happened. The situation began to stress me out, so I decided to call the customer. I dialed the number. The call was answered, but at first I only heard a slight crackle. Hello, did you order a delivery? I'm standing in front of your door. I can see you. A woman's voice came through the receiver, but it didn't lessen my discomfort. Okay, she sees me. But what's next? Is she gonna open the door for me? All right, Can you open the door and take the package? Or should I just leave it here and walk away? I'll take it. Just turn off the flashlight, please. Bright lights are annoying. I'm confused. The request was odd, to say the least. I got an uneasy feeling. Maybe I'm going to be robbed. But what will I take with me? I had my cell phone, some money, and my bucket keys. That's certainly something already. But still not enough. Of course, it would be a shame to part with these things, especially since it wasn't my car. But there wasn't much. If they wanted to rob me, they must have seen from the windows what kind of car I came in. It didn't make sense to risk it for such a small thing, but criminals aren't always reasonable. I was going to leave the order in the driveway and get the hell out of there. As I bent down to set the grocery bag on the floor, the door opened quietly. I froze. No one jumped out at me from there, and no one tried to drag me inside. I hadn't been threatened with a knife. I don't know what made me take the next step, her fragility or the harmlessness of the open-handed gesture. but I picked up the package and held it out to the girl. She took it and carried it into the darkness of her apartment. I thought I saw her silhouette, and that reassured me. Bon appetit. Thank you. Goodbye. I left in a hurry. I thought I heard her sniffle one last time. What a weirdo, I thought, and hurried off to get my next order. Concentrated on my work, and soon the unpleasant thoughts dissipated. At night I had a dream. Someone was beside me. I felt warm breath on my neck. I could hear someone evenly drawing air in through their nose, taking a deep breath and then exhaling. After a couple days, it was all forgotten. Another evening, I was driving through the evening city, enjoying the views. The weather was perfect. I was driving with the window open, my favorite playlist playing in the car. The mood was great. I got a new order, and I was amazed. My fingers uncold, and there was an uncomfortable feeling in my stomach that sometimes comes from excitement. Romantics call it butterflies in the stomach, but I came up with a more appropriate name for it, the tickle of the devil, in short. It made me feel sick. It was undoubtedly the same address and delivery from the same restaurant. I could have canceled the order. I could have come up with a reason. Admittedly, I had already started going over the possible options in my head, but by an effort of will, I stopped myself. Seriously, are you afraid of a strange girl? And anyway, since you got her order again, it means she uses delivery a lot. If something was wrong, she would have been blocked by now. I pondered. Finally calming down, I went to get my order. Half an hour later, I was already at the customer's house. The windows were still dark. What I found strange was that the light in the neighboring apartment on the landing was also off. Maybe she has a big apartment converted from two, or maybe no one lives in the one next door. The rational part of me searched for an explanation for this oddity. I took my time walking up the lighted floors. Deep down I still didn't want to go into the dark. I was against that discomfort. My instinct for self-preservation pulled me to leave the package one floor below, then go downstairs, get in my car, and only then call the strange woman and tell her an equally strange made-up story about why I couldn't deliver her order to her door. But my feet kept pacing, and that's how I got to the border between darkness and light. Mentally laughing at my stupidity, I stepped forward. This time, I didn't ring the doorbell or knock, but dialed her number. She answered instantly. Hello, this is the courier. I brought your order. Oh, hello, I can see you. No, she's very strange. It's not just me. Anyway. Yes, I'm standing here. Should I leave my order on the platform? No, I'll get it. The door opened. Again the darkness, again the outstretched hand, pale, with graceful long fingers. I held out the package and stared into the darkness. For a split second, I thought I saw a smile, and many fangs. I jerked back. The girl held out her other hand, in which a few bills were clutched. This is for your tea. Involuntarily, I giggled nervously. I was being lured. I made an analogy with a deep-sea fish. It has a long flagellum, which is actually an outgrowth of the dorsal fin, with a glowing lure at the tip. This fish also has a monstrous grin. I felt a little ashamed of my behavior. I berated myself. How ridiculous must it have looked from the outside? Hastily taking the tip, I slipped it into my pocket, muttered thank you and hurried away. This time, I heard nothing but the sound of my own footsteps. It was only when I was in the car that I calmed down enough to take out the bills and see what the weirdo had handed me. And there was a lot to see. Even here she distinguished herself. In my hands were for different bills €5, one crumpled dollar, and one brand new, as if just out of print, and 500 rubles. I burst into idiotic, hysterical, uncontrollable laughter. I quickly came to my senses, covered my mouth with one hand, and with the other I drove out of the yard and away from the house for 700 meters. Then I got out of the car and laughed until I fell over. It was the most bizarre piece of advice I had ever received in my life. It was absurd. I told this story to my friend and showed him the bills. We laughed together. The stress dissipated. I finally calmed down, and everything could have been great if I hadn't had a dream that night. A pale hand beckoned me with a gesture of its index finger. As if hypnotized, I followed her up the stairs and into the darkness. She led me to an open door. Space shifted and I fell through that door and then drowned in total darkness. But then, a familiar hand appeared. I woke up in the middle of the night. Somewhere in the street, there was a quiet woman's laughter. I thought it must be a coincidence. Some company is out. I went to the kitchen, made myself some tea and sat like that until morning, with the lights on. Then I took a little break, didn't take orders for a few days, went deep into my studies. I set up a little pizza parlor at home with board games. I felt like I had finally come to my senses and everything was fine. I went back to work. At first I worked a couple hours every night. Then, I started increasing the hours, but nothing was satisfying. The realization came with a new order, at a familiar address. I wanted to refuse, but I couldn't. A mixture of curiosity and confusion tormented me. With a heavy heart and excitement, I drove there. This time there were curtains on the windows. Something new, I thought. I walked over and remembered my dream. The package in my hand seemed to weigh several pounds. I never looked at what people ordered, but she was an exception in every way. The receipt read, steak, rare axe 3. My head jerked to the side. Oh man, I'm going to get her 3 raw pieces of meat. My legs shook. I really didn't want to go there. My whole being resisted, but rationality took over. I had to calm down. I leaned against the wall and started thinking, dude, steaks. So what? This girl is weird. Really weird. It's no surprise that she eats steaks half raw. And anyway, it's a delicacy. You know what I mean. But instinct didn't fail. Why so many? 3 pieces. It's 700 grams of meat. Stubbornness did not allow to admit defeat. What's the big deal? I was hungry. The image of a fisherman popped up in my mind. Yeah, with that mouth. A nervous giggle. Distress had subsided enough that I mustered up the courage to carry the bag to her door. That evening there was a full moon in the sky. Its bluish light illuminated the landing through the small windows. It wasn't so bad. I felt a little better. I confidently dialed her number. Hello, this is a delivery. I'm at the door. Me too. Her voice sounded normal, but I was already cursing myself for being here again. To avoid showing that I was scared, I resorted to the traditional strategy of saying something stupid. You know, it's pretty bright out here today. Why don't I just leave my order right outside your door? No, I'll pick it up myself. Why does she always say no? Ran through my head. Because she likes you. It was the very first thought. The stupidest, but, as experience had taught me, the right one. A lump came up in my throat. I was sweating and on the verge of another hysterical fit. The door opened slightly. A hand peeked out of the small opening. I could finally see it. A very beautiful pale hand, with long, sharp nails covered in black nail polish. It stretched along the wall and waited. I walked over on cotton legs and gently placed the handle of the package in her palm. Suddenly she squeezed my fingers lightly. Not hard. She didn't grab me, didn't hurt me, but out of surprise, I made a sound like a squeak. She stroked my fingers lightly, then let go of my hand and dragged the bag out the door. I stood and clutched her hand in mine like a child. I looked through the gap between the wall and the door and could see her silhouette clearly. A mop of disheveled hair that looked like spikes or horns in places. The moonlight reflected in her eyes, and they seemed to glow. Ah, yes. Are you expecting a tip? UHO. No. Thank you very much. I was just leaving. Into jumps I reached the stairs and ran downstairs. I thought I heard a too-bad somewhere behind me. Right after that I went to the store to get a cheap beer. At home I got drunk and couldn't sleep for a long time, but by morning I was asleep. I dreamed that I was being pulled into a narrow gap between the wall and the door. I tried to grab onto something, but I couldn't. I was pulled into the darkness, where 2 glittering eyes stared back at me against a silhouette with a ruffled mop of hair and the grin of a predatory fish. If the devil exists, I suppose he could look like that. It made me laugh. I laughed, and I woke up crying. I was in tears. Realizing finally that something was wrong with me, I decided to see a doctor. A neurologist examined me and diagnosed me with neurosis. He explained it by the fact that I was overworking, combining study and work. He suggested that I undergo a course of medication and take a break for a while to avoid overstraining and recover. Medicines were expensive, and being temporarily unemployed, I had to make do with little. I didn't say anything to my parents. I spent my evenings at home watching soap operas and playing games. Gradually, the anxiety subsided. I convinced myself that from fatigue and lack of entertainment in life, I invented all sorts of nonsense. None of this has happened. I said to myself, that is, some of it certainly has. I mean the client's quirks. But they're just quirks, not paranormal. Things had calmed down. The last pill had been taken. Summer was in full swing. The days were long, and I was feeling good. Now I wanted more. I wanted to go out, socialize with friends, maybe even find a girlfriend. And, accordingly, I needed money again. I should say that all this time the bucket was standing in the parking lot, covered in dust and bird droppings. My friend had no desire to get behind the wheel of the car. I took my swallow to the car wash and enthusiastically prepared to get down to business. Days went by. There was money. There was entertainment. Life was getting better, and I almost forgot about everything that had happened to me. Enjoying another evening rye, I automatically took the order. After a while I took a closer look, and something inside me trembled. A familiar address, and suddenly, a completely different apartment, one floor below, and the order was not from the usual place. I'll admit, it was pretty damn interesting. With curiosity and a certain amount of childishness, I went to fulfill the assignment. There was a light on the floor, and that was the first thing that surprised me. The light had never been on before, neither on this floor nor on the neighboring floor, but I was still hurt. I kept my distance from the door, so I didn't ring or knock, but just dialed the client's number on the phone. "Hello, did you order a delivery?" "Yes," a husky male voice answered, and I was glad I had. The door was opened by a fat balding man with thick stubble on his face. "Here's your order. Bon appetit." "Yes, thank you." Just a minute. The customer forgot to take the money. He took the pizza boxes into the apartment. I noticed there were kids playing in the hall. That's great. It's great when the customers are normal people. The little man quickly returned and handed me the bills. I decided to satisfy my curiosity. A little later, I regretted it a lot. Perhaps if I hadn't come back to this place, if I hadn't brought it up, if I hadn't moved on, things would have stayed the way they were. Fine. Ow. Excuse me. Can I ask you something? Yeah, sure. Do you know the girl who lives in the apartment above you? The man's eyes widened in surprise. What are you talking about? What girl? That's my apartment. I mean, the one upstairs is mine too. He must have read the confusion on my face. Look, man, I'm serious. I actually rent this apartment, but no one's lived there for a couple months. What are you talking about? But I've had orders. I've made deliveries. I tried searching the app for order history, but I couldn't find anything at that address. I decided to take advantage of the trust. The door was opened by a girl. She was acting really weird, so I thought I'd ask you. The man's eyes became even rounder. He looked behind him. Then he leaned conspiratorially toward me and said, in a whisper, "Let's go take a look." He closed the door and a minute later popped out with the keys. When we were halfway up the stairs, the lights on the floor came on. Stupid wiring goes bad sometimes, the man grumbled. He deftly opened the apartment door, flicked the switch, and gestured for me to come inside. It was indeed a very ordinary apartment. We walked through the rooms, not a soul. There were no grocery bags either. Look, I don't know what happened to you in there. Maybe you got the wrong entrance, or the wrong building. Anyway, look, the apartment's in good condition. Good plumbing, all the necessary appliances, washing machine, refrigerator, microwave. In general, command live. Not interested, actually. Yes, you know, I'm renting a 2-bedroom with another guy right now, and I lied so the man wouldn't get mad that I was distracting him from something important. We had a short conversation. I took his business card and, saying that I was in a hurry but that I would definitely call him back, ran away. Getting into the car, I wondered, what was that? The phone beeped. An order had come in. I looked at the screen and was stunned. It was something out of the ordinary. The same address, the same apartment I'd just been to. It made me angry. If this was some kind of prank, I was going to hurt someone. This guy didn't look like a prankster, though. There was a number on the order. Her number. I memorized it. I decided to put it out of my mind once and for all. Hello, hello, can you hear me? This is the courier. There was silence and a muffled crackle. Listen to me. What do you want from me? Why don't you just fulfill the order? Came a calm female voice after a short pause. Are you offended that I didn't leave a tip last time? It was absurd and unbearable. I hung up the phone, worked up the courage to cancel the order. I gave the car keys back to my friend and vowed to myself to never do delivery again. Things calmed down for a while. Then the calls started, methodically. Once a day, at 7 p.m. She calls me. I try to ignore and not answer, but a couple times I did pick up the phone when things got really bad. Once, "Girl, don't call me. I'm not picking up the phone anymore." "Why not?" I hung up. She says, "I have money." Another time, "Girl, I ask you not to call me, But I need you. Why me? Your smell makes the food more appetizing. At that moment, I felt with every fiber of my being that she was smiling her disgusting smile. I throw my phone on the floor, stomp my foot. I'm remorseful. I don't have the money for a new one. I get a text, "Oh, please, I'll give you a generous tip." I was furious. I screamed. I tried to find out who the number was registered to, but all I managed to find was that the number did not exist with any operator in Russia. I tried to block it in every possible way by phone, through the operator. The devil. I even changed the number. It finds me every time. When I try to show someone her calls or messages, the history is empty. Nothing. And then it starts all over again. She calls me in my sleep, then calls and texts again. I'm afraid to sleep. I wanted to throw the phone in the river, but then I thought, then you won't know what she's up to at all. It wasn't a number, so it wasn't a phone. She recently sent me a message like this: "I'm loaning and I'll come to you. Sometimes, when I pass out in exhaustion, I have a new nightmare." She pulls me to her, plunging me deeper and deeper into the viscous, sticky darkness. I can't move and I can't breathe. And then I see myself from the outside, and I'm not me anymore. I dissolve into her. I'm part of her. She always shows me what she wants. Sometimes the lights go out on our floor. There are power surges at home from time to time. I guess I'm doomed. It's too late to be afraid.